Hey, everybody. Fascinating topic today as we talk about why integration first architecture is becoming the most flexible way to turn AI agents into real business performance with a real innovator in the space at Trey.ai. Rich, how are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. How are you, Evan?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for joining. Super excited for this conversation. We cut through some of the hype and talk about real enterprise opportunities. Before that, maybe introduce yourself and the journey to Trey.ai. What was the big idea
Sure,
when you started?
sure thing. Yeah, I'm Rich Waldron, one of the co-founders of Tray. The big idea or how we started is sort of the way I think most founders operate. In that we were extremely frustrated with the challenges that came with automating and working with lots of different software solutions. So a kind of age-old problem that has seen all the various stages of computing to date. But our approach was, how do we turn smart business people within organizations into capable programmers? How do you sort of take the paradigms of programming and make them more broadly available to a technical audience within a company? And so that journey started 10 years ago, and we've been able to build up this huge kind of orchestration engine that allows people to interconnect lots of different pieces of software, databases, data services in a really kind of seamless visual way. And that's really led itself really nicely to some of the challenges that have emerged in successfully, deploying agentic workflows and agents.
Fantastic. We'll dive into that for sure. And how does your approach differ from, traditional middleware environments that are out there today, been around for a long time,
Yeah.
and people are building on?
Yeah, so I mean, we started out, frankly, trying to use those solutions, and what we found at the time is that in most cases they were built for the sort of on-prem to cloud era, so they weren't as comfortable with cloud workflows or workloads. They weren't
Mm.
as comfortable with more native cloud service APIs, and we found that the effort that was required to build something successfully was not far off what it took just to go and build and deploy it yourself anyway. And so for us, it was all around how do you sort of abstract away all the hard parts of integration, which is not really the connectivity itself, but everything that happens behind the scenes. How do you deal with concurrency and high throughput and APIs failing and everything that builds kind of resilience behind these things that you create? And at the same time, how do you take away the barriers in what happens if a connector doesn't exist? What happens if that service isn't supported natively? How do you make it so that people are able to build capably on top of that? And so the sort of combination of the two has meant that everything occurs within a single platform on Tray. You're not managing logs somewhere else and
Mm.
building in a separate area. It means that you're sort of much faster in the work that you create, and you're not thinking so much about how to handle the scale on the back end.
Fantastic. And we've seen lots of news media reports and studies. The MIT study of a few weeks back that many enterprises are struggling to turn AI pilots into real scalable, services that can provide business impact. Why is that? What are some of the top reasons that you see?
Yeah, I think my view was the headlines perhaps don't tell the full story. So I'm fortunate enough to be on the front line. Trey has thousands of customers. They're medium to large enterprises, many of the world's best known brands, and the trend that I typically see is the agents or the agentic implementations that are owned by IT, that are built in collaboration with the departments, that are well thought out and scoped, and the ROI is kind of measurable and clear. They're being super successful, and they're iterating quickly. They mimic in many ways how historically integration projects have been rolled out.
Mm.
Where I think the pain point is this expectation that frontline employees are going to be amazing at writing prompts. And if we build these agents that have great sort of capability, our employees are going to be able to know exactly how to instruct them or work best with them. And then secondarily, where we're trying to put the creation capability into their hands, it feels a bit early to me. I think a lot of those, people are building agents in areas that perhaps don't really need them. And so I think it's a bit of a difference between, are we thinking strategically about the problem we're trying to solve, and then are we deciding whether a deterministic or non-deterministic solution is the right way to go, versus the blanket, well, people are trying to do things with some of the major LLM providers and aren't getting a great deal of success, which was my interpretation of that reporting.
Yeah, well, really great insight there. I'm looking at your website. You mentioned thousands of customers. I see one. You talk about Yext, well-known brand. How was that such an interesting case study to focus on?
Yeah, Yext was a great case study because they were migrating off a legacy vendor. And so their challenge was they had hundreds of integrations built out. And now for a publicly listed company of a good size, do you think that building the next set of automations on a platform that was built for a bygone era is the right place to go? Secondarily, they recognize that a lot of these processes are going to change. They are going to, infuse AI. They are going to be agentic. So how do we kind of blend the two in a single place? And so their journey with Tray was part migrating everything over, and they're now in this position where they're launching agents internally. They're building them out on Tray, and they have this single kind of governance pane as a company, whereby they're able to control which services these agents connect into. They're able to get additional depth because we connect to so many different solutions, and they're able to very quickly turn this around so that their employees can change the way that they interact with the agents that are built out. So that's been a compelling case study because they've had great success with the agents they've built, but equally they've been able to modernize the integrations that they were previously running.
Wow, pretty cool. And you even have some results here, 60% lower integration costs, 3 times faster builds. That's a pretty fascinating, speed and efficiency gain there. Is that the kind of impact you're seeing across many different industries, customers?
Yeah, I think the speed part is critical because
Mm,
speed obviously matters from a cost component, but actually where it's most impactful is speed of iterating. Not many people build the perfect solution the first time around. And actually, what's been most impressive with some of the larger companies is how agile they've got in trying something out, taking the feedback in really quickly, and then switching these things on. I think the days of we're going to build out a solution and it's going to take 12 months are behind us from an agentic standpoint. It has to be quick deployment, fast iteration, figure out where the value lies, and kind of move toward that. So I think the speed component kind of does double duty from that perspective.
Fantastic. And there's lots of talk about the effect of these tools and your tools, others, on automating developer workflows, automating engineering teams' work and testing. Some are concerned what that impact is on their jobs and careers, but it seems that there is an upside as well in terms of freeing up engineers' time to work on more valuable work and interesting projects. What are you seeing there in terms of how it affects, engineering teams?
Yeah, I think for us, as much as we sort of provide AI and agentic solutions, we're also a consumer. And
Mm,
our engineering teams are using some of the well-known coding AI tools. And I think the value there is pretty immense in that when you're tightly managing the work that's being done, when you got to go through a period of experimentation to figure out how you extract the most value. The coding tools are fantastic at prototyping. They're fantastic at carrying out a lot of the kind of grunt work that historically engineers would have to do manually. And I think what we found is where our engineers have got benefits is it's kind of allowed them to move faster. So I don't think they're necessarily seeing it as a kind of a threat to their role or a threat to the jobs per se. It's sort of it's a productivity gain, and it's not, to me, it's not dissimilar to, I've grown up as a not great engineer, being used to going and checking Stack Overflow for how do I do this? Somebody else has probably done it. There's got to be a way that I can get a gain here or move faster. And I think AI is kind of bringing that right to the front line of the creation piece, and actually carrying out some of that work for people. So Yeah, for me, it's very much about an accelerant, and we've been really impressed with some of the results that we've had internally.
Fantastic. And speaking of accelerant, do you have agent accelerators that are sort of pre-built agents for real world use cases? I see you've chosen things like a support agent, knowledge agent, ITSM agent. That's a great one. HR agent. Is this the sort of low hanging fruit that every enterprise can take advantage of today?
Yeah, that's exactly it. The accelerators and the idea behind them is these are the starting points. And
Mm,
if you think the sort of thing that differentiates companies is the processes they have, the data and where it's structured, and ultimately the sort of proprietary tooling that exists within an organization. So if you're going to get started on this journey, you probably already have some sort of IT support solution in place. So starting with an ITSM agent, working with some of the tooling that you already have, getting something sort of into production that starts to demonstrate how it can work, sets you on your path to then go and say, okay, how can we knit this deeper into the way that we already operate? How can we reach further into some of the platforms that we've already implemented? And it's a nice way to get going because it kind of gives you a framework and it gives you a structure to begin with. And so the accelerators for us have been a really nice way to work with our customers and sort of get them onboarded, get them moving in the right direction. What we then see is they kind of take the ball and run with it, and they start being able to sort of fashion these around some of the challenges they have, and that's really where I think the value starts to accelerate.
fantastic. So as you get into large enterprise, of course, tends to be dominated by big tech companies of various sorts. And if you have a seat at the table with the CIO, you're probably a company like an IBM or a NetApp or Cisco or others. And I see you have lots of integrations with these kind of companies out there. Is that your go-to-market? So being sort of agnostic and partnering with everyone and
I
anyone in
mean,
the enterprise?
it's interesting. All the companies you just mentioned are trade customers,
Mm,
and the go to market for us is, for me, the connectivity piece is table stakes. Like you have to provide great connectivity. You have to be kind of agnostic to the ecosystem. You got to have breadth. But to me, the value is that you can kind of work across these different vendors
mm,
from a governance perspective. So it means that as a CIO or as an IT department, we're in control of where our data goes, which vendors we operate with, which actions we want to take in which downstream vendors. And when you add that agent layer, you're then dealing with, how do I make sure that people aren't throwing proprietary data into an LLM? How do I make sure that we're not exposing systems to people that we shouldn't? And so sort of being that pane of glass that sits between these different systems, or rather that glue that exists in the middle, is really the role that we play. And so from a go-to-market perspective, it's about, how do we help you speed up your implementation? How do we give you the governance and control that you need? But
mm.
ultimately, it's enabling these teams to be able to build faster and be successful.
Fantastic. And speaking of those large enterprises, I mean, many of them already have some kind of integration layer. Big companies they've worked with for sometimes decades. They've been around for
Yep.
a while. How do you start with Trey.ai and embark on this journey when there's so much legacy out there?
Well, that's kind of the beauty of it. I think you find that most enterprises have multiple vendors, and
Mm,
they're serving different problems. And I think just because you have used a vendor historically doesn't mean that that's the right vendor to use for the
mm,
next thing that you need to go and build out. So quite often we'll see a legacy vendor may stay contained with a certain set of automations or integrations, and that organization will say, hey, actually, we're trying to do something that's a little bit more cutting edge. We're trying to build an automation that is going to be able to go beyond the pale of what we're used to. And that's where Trey steps in, and they're able to start getting something stood up with our team very quickly. We kind of go through a joint build process, and that ultimately means that they can get demonstrable value fast. But it doesn't matter that necessarily there's a pre-existing vendor in the building. I think yeah, for companies of the size that we're talking about, that's a pretty normal thing to expect.
brilliant. So we're almost at 2026, hard to believe, but what are you excited about as we head into the new year? Can you give us a peek into the go-to-market or maybe your roadmap? What are you anticipating for next year?
I think the hot topic right now is orchestration and governance for companies. I think the first wave was we have to do something. We have to experiment. We have to try different vendors. We've got to get things stood up. And I think we're now kind of moving into that stage of okay, we've sort of started to figure out what has worked and what hasn't. We now need to put some better checks and balances around what we roll out into production for the companies or the employees that we work with. And so for us, it's a lot about how do we release capabilities that help companies go and do that. So just recently, we launched our agent gateway that allows companies to provide a authentication and permissioning layer to MCP. It also allows companies to expose tools created on Tray via MCP to other services, and it does it all in a governed manner. And we know that that's a problem that a lot of companies are wrestling with right now. So the sort of roadmap for us in the future releases are all about that drumbeat of how do we continue to allow you to take advantage of all this amazing technology, but harness it in a way where you're not kind of giving away the keys to your kingdom.
Brilliant. Well, thanks so much for the update on the vision and strategy. Really looks tremendous, and good luck for the new year.
Thank you very much.
And thank you. Thanks everyone for listening, watching, sharing the episode. Also check out our TV show, techimpact.tv, now on Bloomberg and Fox Business. Thanks, Rich. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.